Hey guys, I'm FatBuddyCat, and this is a mini dirt track racer. A few of you may have seen a chart or a graph like this floating around the interwebs. You know just what it means. Today, we're going to be at about a solid 3. This is the stock 12mm axle that came off of this mini bike. If we bring it up to the workbench and place it next to a straight edge, we can give it a spin and see just how bent that thing really is. Our attempted fix to a permanent solution is going to be to upgrade to a 15mm axle. This bad boy is off a Coleman CT200. If we hold it up to the CT100 axle bolt, we can see that it is a little bit longer. I think we can adjust for that with some washers when we finally install it. There's another issue though. 12mm axle utilizes a 12mm bearing. This is a 6201 RS. This is the factory job for the 6-inch wheels. 12mm on the inside, 32 on the outside. Typically, the 15mm axle goes with an 8-inch wheel, which receives a 6202 RS. Issue here, well, it's too big on the outside diameter and won't fit into our hub. This will. This is a 6002 RS. This one has the 15mm inside diameter and the 32 outside that we need. Alright, let's nerd out a little bit. Try not to mind my mess too much, or my eccentrics. The CC100X rear axle bearing. The stock is a 6201 2RS. So that is a 12mm inside, 32 on the outside, and 10 for the, we'll call it the side wall. On the upgrade that we're going with, we're going to hit 15 on the inside, 32 on the outside, and only 9 on that side measurement. So right away, that means we're going to need to add either a washer or a different length spacer. I got some here from OMB. I believe these are either 1 5/8 or 1 3/4. They're plenty. We're going to be cutting those down. The dynamic load is the friction or force to cause fatigue. Slam, dodo. Alright, so that would be impact, like that. The static load would be the constant load capacity before distortion of the race. So whatever is sitting constantly inside, right, and pushing down. So that would be the rider and the bike itself. That would be if you were going off any sweet jumps. There's probably some other things like friction and physics and stuff that come into play here, but I'm really trying to dumb it down because I'm trying to understand this myself. If we take a look at one more thing, we have speed. This would be the max limited RPM you want to push these bearings. So the stock one is better than the upgrade. Boo-hoo. Well, our upgrade, this guy here, is pulling trump on this big boy. So we know it can keep up. I don't think my considerable bulk and the weight of the mini bike is going to exceed either one of our static load capacities. Again, I'm not even sure if, because you're running two bearings, the load is divided by 2. If it was, you know, we're definitely not getting anywhere close to those numbers. Drag, friction, those might play a role, but I'm going to say we got that licked. The dynamic load is much more considerable. We have 1530 on the stock job, and we're only getting 1260 over here on the supposed upgrade. I would say that cyborg meat right along that inside is what we're giving up. When you hold them side by side, it looks like the outside is probably the same. So our weakness is going to be either this inside collar or the bearings themselves. I'm going to take the seals off of these and we'll look at them side by side then. Oh yeah, guy, they're different, all right. We got 7 balls and we got old 9-ball Johnson over here. Considerable size difference, and it even looks like that outside portion is a little bit beefier on the stock one. It's kind of frustrating, but hey, we're gonna rock with it. Hopefully that number and that number will be close enough. We're definitely fixing to find out. I bet you that's the coolest mini bike stand you ever seen. Over on this side, I just disconnected a spring from my tensioner and then removed the chain. I keep my rear axle assembly together except for one of the spacers. The factory ones are both the same size. I just put brand new bearings in these hubs not very long ago. They don't even have any ride time on them. They're brand new. So it doesn't take much persuasion. Another thing that we're going to be replacing is the spacer that goes on the inside between the two bearings. So just keep that right there, and I'll go ahead and knock that other one out. Two bearings, one sort of new spacer. This one came out of a Baja Warrior, the front wheel. It's set up for the 15-inch axle, and if we hold it next to the one for the 12, we can see it's slightly longer. I'm going to mark it and trim it back. Where we're dealing with bearings, and this is all like finite and stuff, I just took my two spacers and held them down on a flat surface and got to wrapping it with a little bit of painter's tape. Hopefully when I put this in my vise like so, it will give me a nice square reference point for my angle grinder. That way I start up here, just kiss the face, come past it, and then down through that bottom tube. At least that's what we hope. Can't be any worse than that one. Wham bam blah jam. It just went nice and slow. You can see a little slice of cyborg meat happiness. It's pretty even. I just took the shrapnel off real quick. I'll get a round file and clean up the inside as well. We're all good and lubed up. I'll get my last seal on and start putting things back where they belong. I have one bearing in there. Go to drop the spacer in, and voila. These little rings aren't going to cut it. Just found a couple of O-rings that fit tight around the outside of the old spacer. I just found a pair of rubber O-rings that fit snug over the new one. Now when we place it in, it should be, close enough. We might have to do a little bit of the shimmy shake, but I think we'll get it. One more bearing. The new bearings are going to sit a little bit down inside where the other ones were flush. I'm using a 13/16 socket to place over it, and then just giving it the rapida-tapida with the hammer. When your bearings are seated, you should be able to just move your spacer. You don't want it too loose and you don't want it too tight. Either situation could end up with an impingement that may wear or crush the bearing itself. Looks like we're dealing with 16 millimeters. We know that the difference in our bearings was 1 millimeter. So I'm going to have to cut two 17 millimeter spacers out of this stock that I have here. These are 5/8 on the inside, but for all intended purposes, they're going to work. I set my caliper as close as I could get to 17 millimeters, sausage fingers, and then I made a couple marks. I made a finite one with my pencil and then tuned it up with a Sharpie. I can get both of my spacers out of one of these pieces of 5/8. I think I'm going to wrap some tape around and just try to keep that even space between on each side. You know what I mean? Tape on this end, tape on this end, space in the middle, and that'll give us a reference to cut these straight. I mean, as long as nothing melts, this looks pretty promising. It took a little bit of effort, but it was worth it. This is going to save us from having to deal with any washers or anything we don't need to have in our hands when placing the axle through. So now there's only one thing left to do, and this is kind of the scary part. We need bigger holes on our axle tabs. That's 12 millimeter, and we obviously can't get 15 through there. Couple steps, and I got a nice clean result. I'm going to take a little bit of my red paint to these, let it dry, and I will attempt to reassemble everything the same way it came off, just with bigger hardware. I'm going to keep all of my shimming to one side. I think we're going to have to add maybe a washer or two, and then the nut, and that'll help bring everything together right where it needs to be. The new axle is going through just like the stock 12 millimeter. Having just those spacers and no washers to deal with really makes it easy. Give this a bump, and over here we can see we're out of threads. There's those washers I was squawking about. Might even add another one. And then I'll get my nut on there, tighten it, and see where we are. It was even easier and neater to just cut another 5/8 spacer. That one's probably, I don't know, 3/8 of an inch. Everything tightened up. The brake is ever so slightly rubbing, but we have a perfect rotation. I'll hook the chain up and make sure everything still lines up over there. Oh yeah, that's that butter roll, baby. We good. Here's just one more way to kind of visualize and understand what we may have accomplished here. If we just keep the balls in consideration, they're both the same grade material and have the same structural integrity. There's 7 of them in the stock bearing, and there's 9 in the new one. These 7 are larger than these 9. That means, because it's round, it has a greater surface area. A greater surface area should equate to a longer lifespan. Why? Well, more rolls to cover the same distance. Just like if we were looking at a pair of wheels. This one rolls a certain distance. This one's going to have to roll more times to travel the same distance. More surface area means less rolls per revolution of the axle as well. So, if we put that in the middle and we spin it, right? And all these balls are on the outside touching the axle when it spins. They don't have to rotate as many times for that axle to go around, right? Because the two surfaces are going to mate up against one another. Same thing happens over here, except when this axle spins, it's going to contact the surface of that ball more. The smaller surface area wears faster as it makes more contact during that revolution. This is what we're giving up and sort of what we're gaining. The 12 millimeter axle is definitely weaker. You can't argue that. I would end up, my body weight and the wear and tear that I'll put in on this mini bike, I would end up replacing the bearings and the axle every time it bent. This is kind of what we're hoping for. Stronger axle, it's just not going to bend. However, I'll have to replace the bearings more frequently because we know the science proves that these are going to wear quicker. This might be better for lighter riders who don't bend the axle in the first place. It's cheaper to just replace the bearings. So hopefully doing this is going to kind of be the same, you know, and even though I'm a heavy rider, I'm just going to have to replace my bearings more than a lighter rider. Now, we got to figure out how to use this thing. Apparently, this tool there it is used to both install and uninstall stainless steel zip ties. I got a bag of them right here, and there's a few different places we can use these to tidy things up on this mini bike. Let's investigate a little further. Oh, that was nice of them. Free release tool. Thought that was that guy's job. Oh boy. And someone's going to try to tell us how to do our job today, because these appear to be some sort of instructions. Yeah, this ought to be interesting. Look at there. It's so important, I found it necessary to give me 2 copies. Probably supposed to hang one on the break room wall. General information. The designation of, they don't even call it anything but the WC2322 stainless steel cable tie tool, is to offer robust construction which allows easy maintenance and long operational life of the tool. Suitable for stainless steel cable ties with a width up to 12 millimeters. I have no idea. We're just going to guess they're going to work, and we're going to try to use them. Let's see. Self-tensioning tool is hand-powered. Really? Who would have thought? So tightening the stainless steel tie to your desired tension is achieved simply by squeezing and holding the handle. So basically, the tension is completely up to the operator. After releasing the handle, the self-return spring will bring the tool back into the position there for the next cable tie. Operation. Loop cable tie around bundle. Insert tip through head. Pull tie up. Snug bundle by hand. Place tool on tie as shown. Okay, we're gonna have to get some materials out here. Alright. They must be talking about a bundle of rebar. So you'd have a bunch of steel or iron rods, in a bunch together, and they apparently wrap those with these steel zip ties. I just put it around a big old socket, just like a regular zip tie, and started pulling it through. Apparently, this tail is going to feed through this end, and then I think that's when we hit the squeeze action. Somehow it tightens it, and it says squeeze release, so it's like a ratchet thing. Once that's done, this handle gets rotated up, I believe, and that is supposed to cut or break the end of the tie somehow. Yeah, let's just let this thing eat a little bit and see what happens. Sudden delay of game. I had a minor revelation before the party even started. If we concentrate right here on this little jaw mechanism, I'm going to squeeze the, what do they call these, handles? When I squeeze, you can see the jaw closes. If the zip tie is going through there, that jaw is going to grip on it and pull it. The reason it's able to pull it is because the, we'll call it tensioner, I guess it would be the release if we were taking it off, is going to bottom out against this face. So slide that through, and every time you pump it, it'll pull it until I guess you can't pull it anymore. I don't think anything's going to give. Stainless steel after all. Alright, here goes. What? That didn't even ratchet at all. And it's definitely not tight. Well, guess we don't need this thing either. Let's try that again. If you're wondering how these work, well, you're not alone, because I was too, up until about 35 seconds ago. There's a little ball bearing in there. You see it? Let's take a look from the side. When we pull this tail, right, the ball travels to this end and it bottoms out against the tank. So when we have tension on it, the ball bottoms out and it impinges on the cable. When you cut the cable tie, the ball, by nature, rolls back down to the tapered end. When it does that, there is a little bit of slack that is created. And that little bit of slack keeps you from putting any real tension on these things. That's a wrap. I've since gone back to much simpler times. I'm just looping the tail around a set of needle nose pliers and twisting it. I'm going to release and grab again a little bit closer and twist it again. Might get a series of kinks or maybe some pigtail action. We'll see what happens. Looks like we got the combo plate right up until the point that the tie gave out and the tension released, sending the ball back down into its home and not tight like we want it to be. This is the area of most concern. I was hoping to replace several of these ring clamps with a multitude of these stainless steel ties. I was under the impression that it was like a ratchet thing, kind of like pulling a zip tie. The tighter you pull it, the tighter it is. And that's just the end of it. There is a way you can try to poke something in and hold the bearing in place and then pull. That way, when the tension releases, it's already on the tapered end, so it kind of stays where it's at. But I mean, I tried a few different things and it's got to be small, kind of like if I cut off a piece of a governor spring or something. And even at that, man, I'm going to be fighting it. This is ugly, but realistically, this is better. It's easier, it's simpler, it's tighter, and I've run these on a few different things, including my dual sport, and they don't loosen up. So, we already have a support welded in. maybe that'll be enough, and we can get rid of this unsightly hanger. We'll give it a shot. There's no doubt about that. It definitely looks better. The Mini 91 is welded on. We got our brace. There's only one way to really know what's going to happen, and that's going to be to run it. So, moving on. On the opposite side of the mini bike, I just continued with that less is more theme. I took out the braided hose that had the union, the two ring clamps, and just replaced it with a nice fresh section. It's also about that much shorter, so it's a little more direct. The last thing we're going to be installing today is an oil drain extension. I got this one directly from Coleman Power Sports. On this particular block, we have a dump in the rear and in the front. The front looks like it's going to be our most direct route. Even when this is installed, I think we'll still be over the edge of the plate here. So I think this bike has oil in it. I was going to do one before I tried to start it. I'm going to try to tip it up this way so that I can get that plug off, get this on, get the plug back in, put it back down, and then we'll drain whatever oil's in here. I'm propped up just to the point where I'm about to start dropping oil all over the garage floor. So this is going to take 2 crush washers. One goes on with the extension, the other one with the plug. This thing's been sitting for a few minutes just to let any oil return back down from the head to the bottom of the block. This is super easy to get to. You take it off, just make sure you bring your washer with you so you don't drop it down into the pool. If this engine was hot, it would come out a whole lot quicker. I'm going to add just a shag under 16 ounces of fresh oil. A little bit of fresh gas. Turn this thing on at the valve right here, and I'll let the carb fill up and check for leaks. So far, so good. Yep, that's oil. I have 100% lost track of these carburetors, but all my engines are tuned pretty closely, so I think this is going to start right up. I have the driver off, so I don't have to worry about it going anywhere. level. Everything seems pretty smooth. I think I'd be okay with the better. Look at that change on. Oh, it smells great. To it. Nothing that doesn't smooth out with a little RPM. It's a crazy little engine. Carburetor's getting in on the action. It's loading up. We have to make a little adjustment. That's all. Close. Really gonna have to get a load on it, ride it to get it perfect. Call that good for now. In the next video, we're gonna take this thing out for a ride. In the meantime, I'm going to reinstall my torque converter and then go over every nut and bolt. Because as always, it's a work in progress. Have a good night, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.